People, poetry. Now, as we said in the previous broadcast, a lot of poetry relies on your reaction to it. It's how you feel after hearing it. Remember also that a great deal of poetry is about sound, not reading. And the problem is that, especially at grade 12 level, teachers teach poetry in order to get their students to pass the exam. And to a certain extent that is understandable, because obviously all of us want our students to pass exams. The school at which I teach, Tapelong, has had a 100% pass rate for 2 years running, and I'm very proud of that. But that's not the final destination of the students. The matric exams are merely the passport to life after school, further studies, earning a living. And what we are teaching should be primarily to prepare our students for what they will encounter in real life, outside the schoolyard, outside the classroom. The classroom is the beginning, the rest of life is to follow. Now here we have another example of a poem that has had a very serious effect on me. This is by Stephen Spender. It is an elementary school classroom in a slum. Now, who was Stephen Spender? Remember what we said earlier. You should know who wrote the poem, when he wrote the poem, why he wrote the poem, or she, should the poet be female, be that as it may. So Stephen Spender lived through most of the 20th century. This poem was written somewhere around the middle part of the 20th century, and it is so relevant to our situation in South Africa today with under-equipped classrooms. Let's be quite honest, many of our schools are under-equipped. Many of our teachers do struggle to teach, especially English. Of course English is difficult to teach. Look at the language used by Shakespeare and Milton and John Donne. I mean, we're still going on to Milton a little bit later. But here you have a guy describing problems and questioning, why are we attempting to educate children like this? Now, let's read the poem. A lot of it will speak for itself. And I wonder how many of you students out there are thinking, but that's what I always said. And you will probably be right. Shall we read this poem together? Bear with me. It is fairly long. It has 4 stanzas. We must look at them slowly and carefully. And what does it say? This is, of course, an elementary school classroom in a slum by Stephen Spender. Far from gusty waves, these children's faces, like rootless weeds, their hair torn round their pallor. The tall girl with her weighed down head, the paper-seeming boy with rat's eyes, the stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones, reciting a father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. At back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young. His eyes live in a dream of squirrel's game, in tree room other than this. On sour cream walls, donations. Shakespeare's head, cloudless at dawn. Civilized dome riding all cities. Belled, flowery, Tyrolese Valley, open-handed map, awarding the world its world. And yet, for these children, these windows, not this world, our world, where all their futures painted with a fog, a narrow street sealed in with a lead sky, far from rivers, capes, and stars of words. Surely Shakespeare is wicked, the map a bad example, with ships and sun and love tempting them to steal, for lives that slyly turn in their cramped holes, from fog to endless night. On their slag heap these children wear skins, peeped through by bones and spectacles of steel with mended glass, like bottle bits on stones. All of their time and space are foggy slum. So blot their maps with slums as big as doom. Unless governor, teacher, inspector, visitor, this map becomes their window, and these windows that shut upon their lives like catacombs. Break, oh break open till they break the town and show the children to green fields and make their world run azure on gold sands, and let their tongues run naked into books, the white and green leaves open, history theirs whose language is the sun. Wow. A very depressing poem, but it ends on useful advice. It ends on a positive note. It's not all doom and gloom, but most of it is. Let's go back to the beginning, and we ask ourselves, what is the poet telling us in this poem? Remember what we said? Theme. What are we learning from this poem? And here, if you don't mind, I shall refer to some things that I learned here at the University of the Free State. There are different types of intelligences. Some people have language ability, second to none. Other people have what they call logico-mathematical ability. All right? Now, those are the two abilities that are developed the most in a standard academic classroom. But they are not the only intelligences. What about bodily kinesthetic, which enables you to dance, which enables you to play soccer? I can't play soccer. If you want to make sure that you are going to win a soccer match, put me in the opposing team, especially in the position of goalie, because all the shots you take at goal are going to beat me. I'm useless at that. I don't have that talent. And this was detected by Stephen Spender all those years ago, before somebody even named what bodily kinesthetic intelligence was. He's pointing out that for many children, this is a waste of time. This is not where their future lies. This is not going to help them to achieve something after matric. And then he gives examples. Now, let's look here at this poem. I'm going to use an electronic pointer. There we are. Oh, I'm so pleased to have a grandson who can teach me how to use these things. You know, you look here, and you've got first this negative description of the children in the class. Now, these are obviously the products of a slum. A slum is like a squatter camp. In fact, a slum is, to a very great extent, a squatter camp, where people lived when they had nowhere else to go. So what do? You make a plan. You make yourself a shelter. You gather up firewood every night. If there's no firewood, you get a little bit of coal and you make a fire out of coal and you boil your pot of papa on that, or whatever it is that you are going to eat. You make a plan, you get by, you survive, but you will be malnourished. And here, you've got this description of rootless weeds. A weed is not a particularly glamorous plant, but weeds are tough, they survive. All right? Their hair torn down around their pallor. Pallor is grayness, grey, pale faces. Tall girl with her weighed down head. In other words, head too large for her miserable, undernourished body. And the paper-seeming boy, thin, paper, thin-skinned, with rat's eyes, closed eyes. The stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones, reciting a father's gnarled disease. This is a genetic disease that he's inherited. He's lessened from his desk. In other words, he's bent over like this, facing his desk the whole time. At the back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young, his eyes live in a dream of a squirrel's game in a tree room. Other than this, he has escaped into a fantasy world, which is why he, of all the people alone, is still happy to be in that classroom. It just doesn't bother him, even though it's horrible. Then you've got this description of donations. Obviously, these are poor people. They live on handouts. Shakespeare's head. Who cares about Shakespeare's head? You know, if you're under these circumstances, what is Shakespeare's head going to do for you? And the answer is absolutely nothing. And then cloudless at dawn, you know, a picture of a sunrise, civilized dome riding all cities, all right? Belled, flowery, Tyrolese Valley, scenic things, open-handed map of the world. And yet for these children, these windows, not this world, our world, futures painted with a fog, when you've got thick cloud covering the surface of the earth. And for these children, that's reality. They hardly live outside of slum areas, houses stacked on top of each other. It says here, narrow streets sealed in with a lead sky. Okay, far from rivers, capes, and the stars of words. Okay, they are in a no-win situation. For some township children, that is their perception of what the future holds for them. I have seen in our township, I teach in a township school, and I'm very proud of that, by the way, because it's a prestigious school, even though it is a no-fee school and in a township. That's okay. I like it. I'm proud of that. But I have seen children who put no effort into their matric because they were convinced that there was no future for them. They thought that they were going to sit in the township and smoke matakwani for the rest of their lives, and that's the only hope they had. But they were wrong. This school, of which I am a proud staff member, has been producing success. And why is that? Because the change came from our students. The staff members haven't changed. We're still the same staff, most of us, that taught the guys 5 years ago. But the results have gone up because the students have started to realize that they can achieve something. Sitting in the township is not the be-all and the end-all. They can go to UOFs. They can go to CUT. I mustn't advertise for the opposition. But the point is, many of them, in growing numbers, are now attending universities. They are getting well-paid jobs. They have high-ranking positions today in the local municipality. It's not a death sentence to grow up in a township. It depends on your own attitude. Let's move on to the last two stanzas here. And here, what does Stephen Spender say? Surely, according to these students. Just by the way, I don't call people learners. Learners are passive people who sit and absorb information and concepts and stuff. Students are people who study. You are in your grade 12 year, your matric year. You must study. I know studying can be boring, but it is the passport through matric into a successful tertiary education, and from there into a successful career. Study, students. Surely Shakespeare is wicked. I mean, Shakespeare is just irrelevant to them. The map, a bad example. They've got no hope to get out there. Ships and sun and love tempting them to steal. Obviously, if you're poverty-stricken, the thought will come to you, how can I get some money? And the easiest way to get money is to steal, as long as you don't get caught, of course. For lives that slyly turn in their cramped holes from fog to endless night. A pointless existence. Fog and then you die. A miserable life followed by death, and that's that. On their slag heap. You know, the rejected bits of a slag is actually what is left over after iron has been extracted from iron ore. Okay, slag, valueless muck. These children wear skins peeked through by bones, spectacles of steel with mended glass, you know, can't afford to fix the window panes, like bottle bits on stones, you know, glass, top of a wall to stop people climbing over. All of their time and space are foggy slum, dirty, grey, miserable, hungry. So blot their maps with slums as big as doom. As far as they're concerned, slums lead to death, and that was what life is about. Okay. And then, of course, that the fourth stanza, unless governor, teacher, inspector, visitor, this map becomes their window, and these windows that shut upon their lives like catacombs, burial chambers, long places where lots and lots and lots of bodies are buried. And then he has a sort of a prayer here now. Break, oh break, open till they break the town, and show the children to green fields, and make their world run azure on gold sands, and let their tongues run naked into books. In other words, to benefit from books. The white and green leaves open history theirs, whose language is the sun. Real education, please. If somebody is not academically inclined, why shove him in an academic school? Why not give him practical training? Why not allow him to go out and become something in the performing arts world? It's a frustration to many of us teachers also when we look at people who really aren't at home in a classroom because they don't have these intelligences to study the languages, to study the logico-mathematical stuff. They want to be doing other things. They are not stupid at all. They are very intelligent, but in a different way. And that's what this poem is saying. Sort out the education. Give education that means something in life. Don't just sit and wait for everybody to be pushed through the same system. We don't all belong there.